Part 2, we left off with the modern student talking to nicer. Modern student, would you like to continue?
Thanks, Dr. Jacl. So, my mind is not failing because it struggles with infinite information. It is doing its best in a very unnatural information environment.
That is a reasonable way to put it.
Elizabeth Loftus, this brings us directly to memory and misinformation. How does your work help explain modern life?
Modern life is full of post-event information. People see an event, then encounter commentary, edited clips, headlines, social media posts, rumors, reactions, and repeated retellings. All of that can shape memory. Memory is reconstructive. It is not a fixed recording. So, in the modern world, the question is not simply, what happened? It is also, what information did you encounter afterward?
That feels disturbingly relevant. So even my memory of an argument, a news event, or something I saw online can change as I talk about it, or see reactions.
Yes. Memory can be influenced by suggestion, wording, repetition, emotion, and source confusion. People may remember not only what they saw, but what they later heard, imagined, inferred, or were told.
Memory has always been unstable.
Yes, but the mechanisms matter. We need evidence, not just interpretation, Sigmund.
Students, Loftus helps explain the modern misinformation environment. Memory does not happen once. It gets updated, reconstructed, and sometimes distorted. That matters for eyewitness testimony, social media, politics, relationships, and personal identity. When everyone is constantly exposed to commentary after the fact, memory becomes socially vulnerable.
Brian Nosek, I feel like I need you now. Because if memory is reconstructive, behavior is shaped, the unconscious exists, social media manipulates me, and psychology itself had a replication crisis. How do I trust anything?
You trust through process, not certainty. Science is not trustworthy because every finding is perfect. Science is trustworthy when it is transparent, self-critical, open to correction, and willing to revise. The replication crisis showed that psychology needed better practices: pre-registration, open data, open materials, larger samples, replication, registered reports, and better incentives.
So, uncertainty does not mean giving up. It means building better methods.
Exactly. A mature science does not pretend it cannot be wrong. It builds systems that make it easier to find out when it is wrong.
This is such an important finale point. Psychology has made mistakes. It has overclaimed, excluded people, misused tests, trusted weak evidence, and sometimes followed the values of its time too uncritically. But psychology also has tools for correction: better methods, better ethics, better theories, better transparency, better awareness of culture and power. That is what students should take away. Now I want each of you to answer the student directly. Which part of psychology helps explain modern life? One sentence each, if possible. I know this group. I am watching you. Wundt?
Modern life requires careful study, not speculation disguised as certainty.
Your attention and habits shape the life you actually live.
You are still moved by motives you do not fully understand.
Your behavior reveals what your environment has trained.
Your digital world is a system of reinforcement contingencies.
Your distress may reflect the gap between who you are and who you feel allowed to be.
Your mind is actively organizing overwhelming streams of information.
Your memories are reconstructed in a world full of suggestion and misinformation.
Your knowledge is strongest when your methods are transparent and open to correction.
That was annoyingly helpful.
Now the harder question. What does each perspective miss? Modern student, you try.
Okay, Wundt gives us method, but maybe not enough messy lived experience. James gives us lived experience, but maybe not enough controlled testing. Freud gives us depth, but can overinterpret. Watson gives us behavior, but can ignore inner life. Skinner gives us environmental design, but can make humans feel too controlled. Rogers gives us humanity and growth, but maybe not enough attention to systems and evidence. Nisa gives us information processing, but cognition can sometimes feel too computer-like. Loftus gives us memory distortion, but we should not conclude memory is always useless. Nosek gives us scientific reform, but methods alone do not decide which questions matter.
Standing ovation from the lab. That is the mature historical move. You do not just ask, who was right? You ask, what did this perspective reveal? What did it hide? Why did it emerge when it did? How did the zeitgeist make it powerful? And how can we use it responsibly now? Wait, the room just got weird. I think the zeitgeist itself has arrived.
You called me every episode. I am the spirit of the times. I do not write theories, but I whisper in the ears of those who do. I made laboratories seem necessary. I made evolution feel like progress. I made measurement feel objective. I made behavior control feel modern. I made computers feel like minds. I made post-war obedience feel urgent. I made civil rights research morally necessary. I made memory science legally important. I made replication reform unavoidable. And now I make AI feel like the mirror in which humanity studies itself.
So psychology is always shaped by its time?
Yes, but not trapped by it. The best psychologists notice me. The worst mistake me for truth.
That is the whole course in one line. The zeitgeist shapes what questions feel obvious, what methods feel legitimate, what explanations feel scientific, and what problems feel urgent. But studying history helps us see the water we are swimming in.
So what about now? What is our zeitgeist? AI? Burnout? Mental health? Identity? Climate anxiety? Political polarization? Loneliness? Productivity culture? All of it?
Our current moment is asking psychology new questions. What counts as intelligence when machines generate language? What counts as creativity when AI can make art? What happens to memory when everything is recorded but nothing is trusted? What happens to attention when every platform competes for it? What happens to identity when the self is constantly displayed, measured, and judged? What happens to mental health when people are more connected and more lonely at the same time? What happens to science when misinformation spreads faster than correction? This is why history matters. Every generation thinks it is finally asking the real questions. History reminds us that our questions come from our moment, and that means we need humility.
And courage.
And compassion. And transparency.
And better environments.
And careful attention to misinformation.
And willingness to face what is hidden. And method.
So the answer is not one psychologist. It is a toolkit.
Exactly. History of psychology is not a museum. It is a toolbox, a messy, dramatic, occasionally dangerous toolbox, but a toolbox.
I think I finally get it. Psychology's history is not just a list of names. It is a record of humans, trying to understand humans, while being human themselves. That means every theory is brilliant, limited, shaped by its moment, and worth questioning.
That is the finale. That is the course. And there we have it. Across this series, psychology has been a laboratory science, a clinical practice, a tool of institutions, a force for social change, a courtroom witness, a philosophical puzzle, and a self-correcting scientific community. No single psychologist explains us now. Wundt reminds us to measure carefully. James reminds us that consciousness flows through real life. Freud reminds us that hidden motives matter. Watson and Skinner remind us that environments shape behavior. Rogers reminds us that people need acceptance, authenticity, and growth. Neisser reminds us that the mind actively organizes information. Loftus reminds us that memory is reconstructive. Nosek reminds us that science must be transparent and self-correcting. And the zeitgeist reminds us that psychology is always shaped by the world in which it is created. For students, here's the final takeaway. Psychology is not one finished answer to the question of human nature. It is an ongoing argument, a method, a mirror, a warning, a toolkit, and maybe, at its best, a way of becoming more honest about what humans are, what harms us, what shapes us, and what helps us grow. I'm Dr. Jacl, and this has been Minds in the Lab. Thank you for traveling through the history of psychology with us. Now go question your assumptions, check your evidence, Notice the zeitgeist, and please, Arco, for the love of all peer review, do not cite a theory just because it sounds cool.